And therefore, if you think they're rational, then the advertising is going to be about, actually, we're going to have to use rational arguments. We're going to have to give information. We're going to have to inform people about goods, about the objective character of goods, about where they come from and how they were made and how well they do their job, etc. And we've got to give people a reason to buy the product. That is, if they're rational, they're not just going to spend their money without some thinking through of the argument. And so if you look at the early stage of advertising, in fact, it's full of these what seem to be very rationalistic modes of argumentation, in which you're trying to convince people in a rational way. And therefore, it's also, of course, connected to early on. It's also connected to the fact that, well, you only have newspapers to deal with, and the major form of communication at that point is text. And so there is a lot of writing, because that is what the medium also encourages as well. So we've got to be able to actually look at the needs of media. You've got to look at the media that is available to you. You've got to look at the audience and, well, what do you think about the audience? And then you've got to say, okay, well, how is this, and what are the needs of manufacturers? What are the needs of business? And advertising agents have to mediate that relationship. Advertising agents are always, they talk about themselves. They say, we're the filling in the middle of the sandwich. The media and the business, they're the bread of the bread, and we're in the middle, kind of mediating what their needs are. That notion of rationality doesn't change, because in fact some products, right up until the present day, some product types and some audiences are thought to work through rationality. And so to rationality is added, around 1910, is added the notion of irrationality as well. And this is what we're going to be in this, these two classes, we're going to keep talking about these different stages of advertising. And essentially historically, there are four stages. We may be in a fifth stage now, and we'll look at that later on. But in terms of the historical work that's been done, there are four different stages of advertising. And almost everything will keep coming back to these four different periods. The second period, as I said, is this notion of irrationality. By this time, advertisers know a lot more about people. They've had experience of how people actually consume, and they realize that people are more than just rational. And also remember, now it's not just, there is a real need in the early part of the century to make sure that the immense accumulation of commodities is sold. And you've got to really move into high persuasion mode. And that's going to require also more than just rationality. And in this period, human nature comes to be viewed as basically irrational. And that is, you can appeal to people not just through their rational, not through the rational, but you can appeal to them also through non-rational impulses. You can appeal through the emotions. You can appeal through feelings. And so ads operate by suggestion. Illustrations and photography become much more important in this period as well. There's a lot more kind of attention-getting stimuli in advertising, a lot more visual tricks that are used. There is a play upon sympathy. There's a play upon the notion of the people actually are really worried about being in society. They're worried about what other people think about them as well. And so there's a great deal, as you'll see, there's a great deal of play upon the fear of public shame. The fear that someone is going to evaluate you and evaluate what you're doing, and they're going to reach some kind of negative conclusion about that. Or that, in fact, people like getting recognition. They like approval. So what can you do to, in fact, to play upon those feelings, those that appeal to emotion? The third stage, so to rationality is added this notion of irrationality. The third stage, I'll spend a little bit of time on this now, is the stage of what's called motivational research, which lasts from about the 1930s into the 1950s. There are, in this period, there are new techniques, new research techniques that are introduced. It becomes much, much more scientific. There is lots of laboratory testing of people to find out what motivates them. It's kind of bringing the sciences, the social sciences, and the human sciences at the service of advertising. And what is motivational research? What is it that motivates people? What is the basis of behavior? Because if you can find out the basis of behavior, then you can use that information in how then you construct your ads. As I said, there's a lot of psychological testing. There's a focus on the consumer as an individual. That is, what is it that makes the person tick? And essentially, it's a kind of, if the second stage, okay, the first stage was a focus on the product. Okay, here is what the product does. The second stage was recognizing that individuals are, in fact, part of society. And that, in fact, it's just as important to talk about not just what the product does, but what it means. In this third stage, there's a kind of turning inwards even more to the consumer. Can we get inside the consumer's head? Can we try, in fact, through laboratory testing, can we get inside the brain and actually figure out exactly what is going on with consumers? And can we pinpoint the basis? Can we pinpoint the basis of human behavior? And if you can, if you're an advertiser, you can and you can pinpoint the basis on which the audience that you're appealing to operates, and you know that, you can figure that out, well, that gives you a tremendous advantage in terms of how then you construct your communication devices, how then you construct your ads. So there is a great deal of focus in this period of trying to find that out. So I've got a relatively long quote. Let's go to quote number 3. This actually is from, I showed you the cover of this book earlier on in the semester. This is the book about subliminal advertising, but he talks about the development of motivational research. And he says, quote number 3, sorry, hold on. Okay, quote number 3 says, the advertising researchers employed psychological methods that had previously been used to diagnose and treat neuroses. They discovered that people often bought things for unconscious reasons they were not aware of. Okay, that's a little bit different than irrational. Now this is the movement inside. This is the movement into the unconscious. In a process known as depth probing, they ferreted out consumers' secret motivations about particular products by asking subjects to lie down and spontaneously disclose their innermost feelings. The researchers asked questions such as, quote, what is your earliest memory involving a cookie? Or how does eating a cookie make you feel? They also employed word association tests, cookies, mother, milk, sentence completion tests. When my mother gives me a cookie, I felt. And projective tests, in which the subject was shown a picture and asked to make up a story about it. They utilized psychodramas, in which subjects were asked to physically act out their feelings toward the product. Focus groups were used to probe several consumers at the same time. Let's say at the same time. Sure, sorry, there's a mistake. That should say at the same time, not as the same time. The sessions were often filmed and analyzed by teams of researchers. Okay, so the movement into the laboratory, the movement into the individual psyches of consumers, really trying to get at what it is that is the basis of behavior. The second part of the quote, this is the second part of quote 3, again talking about this, it says, in addition to psychological tests, advertisers developed electronic equipment that measured consumers' unconscious physical reactions to products, packages, and advertising. The devices they created detected minuscule changes of sweat on the skin, tiny changes in heart and pulse rates, and minute muscular contractions that divulge the subject's unconscious emotional states. Okay, so people are hooked up to electrodes and in their heads, they're shown stuff, and they see how the body responds. They see how the body responds to different kinds of stimuli. In some supermarkets, sophisticated hidden cameras were used to monitor the eye movements of shoppers. The dilation of the shoppers' pupils revealed how interested they were in each of the products. The number of times they blinked revealed their degree of tension. He says, many of the shoppers were found to be in mild hypnotic trances when they did this. Actually, sometimes that's the only way you can get through shopping in a supermarket, is to be in some kind of trance. So this is, as I said, a movement kind of inwards, a movement towards the unconscious. Now I'm going to show you a little clip now from a video. This is a contemporary, again, this method and this research technique didn't go away. In fact, advertisers are still doing it. Actually, some people are making millions of dollars doing this stuff. I'm going to show you a clip now. It's about 9 minutes long from talking about one of these strategies from a film called The Persuaders, which was a film on PBS. It's actually, it's an okay film. And I may use some other clips from it as well. And this is a contemporary version. This is a contemporary version of motivational research.
As a focus group, just a really, really small group.
Far away from the boardrooms of the entertainment industry, in places like this nondescript office park outside Boston, the nitty-gritty work of selling starts with a simple questionnaire about bread.
And now what do you see as the disadvantages to eating grain-based foods?
Today, faced with a nation hooked on low-carb diets, the baked goods industry needs to find out just how Americans feel about their products.
Okay, I'm going to read you some different emotions. I've got a whole list of them here. For each one of them, I just want you to tell me yes or no as to whether or not you think you feel that emotion when you're eating white bread. Okay? The first one is accepting. Do you feel accepting when you're eating white bread?
Yeah, I would say yes, sir.
Affectionate?
No.
Lonely?
No.
Disappointed?
No.
Afraid?
No.
Trusting?
No, I don't think that would be an issue.
Would you feel uncertain?
Yeah, a little uncertain. I've got one question. Can I ask a question? The question was, when you eat bread, do you feel lonely? Have you found people say yes, they feel lonely when they're eating bread?
Not a lot on this one.
Welcome to the strange world of market research.
Now, we have to be careful because that's not politically correct to say women and inside.
Where those who claim to have figured out the hidden desires of consumers are treated as gurus.
We all come from a woman. We all spend 9 months inside of a woman. So women are expert in the inside. Translation, when a woman buys a car, the first thing she is looking at is, do they have cup holders? You know,
Dr. Clotaire Rapaille lives in a baronial mansion in upstate New York.
Price-quality relationship.
Fortune 500 companies and their advertising agencies flock there to drink French champagne, admire Rapaille's many cars, and listen with rapt attention to his insights on the irrational mind of the American shopper.
And we have to understand for each product what is the dynamic behind that. What is it that people are really buying there? We still have people that buy things that they don't really need. Sometimes a product is not expensive enough.
What sets Rapaille apart from many other market researchers is his belief that consumers are driven by unconscious needs and impulses.
My experience is that most of the time, people have no idea why they're doing what they're doing. They have no idea. So they're going to try to make up something that makes sense. Why do you need a Hummer to go shopping? Well, you know, in case I need to go off-road. Well, you live in Manhattan. Well, you need a four-wheel drive in Manhattan. Well, you know, sometimes I go out and this is, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand that this is disconnected. This has nothing to do with what the real reason is for people to do what they do.
Rapaille began his career as a psychiatrist in Europe studying autism.
My training with autistic children is that I had to understand what these kids were trying to tell me with no words because they don't speak. Wow. So then that's part of my training. How can I decode this kind of behavior, which is not a word?
Rapaille claims that there are unconscious associations for nearly every product we buy, buried deep in our brains.
One of my discoveries was that when you learn a word, whatever it is, coffee, love, mother, the first time you understand, you imprint the meaning of this word, you create a mental connection. And so actually every word has a mental highway. I call that a code, an unconscious code in the brain.
Corporations love the idea of buying a single key to the psyches of vast numbers of consumers, a simple code that lies behind millions of individual decisions. Rapaille gave up psychiatry and says he has never looked back.
I have 50 of the Fortune 100 company as clients.
Tonight, Rapaille has been invited to speak to the Luxury Marketing Council of America.
The premise of the council is to bring the smartest minds in marketing together and help us all figure out ways to get more money from